All right, so we're diving into something kind of wild today.
Okay.
Luxury brands,
Right.
struggling sales, and what it all might actually mean for the rest of us.
Yeah.
It feels counterintuitive, right? The economy seems like it's doing okay. The wealthy are doing just fine, so why aren't all those luxury goods flying off the shelves?
Right.
You gave us a fascinating report from Morgan Stanley and an article, Luxury Loses Its Luster, that really digs into all this. So
Yeah.
let's unpack it.
It's a really interesting paradox, and I think both of these sources kind of give us a really good um, two different angles on this.
Yeah.
The Morgan Stanley report, I think, gives us kind of that Wall Street perspective, analyzing investor concerns, and then the article really gets into the nitty-gritty of like consumer behavior, especially here in
Yeah.
the U.S.
Okay, so both sources point to China as kind of a major player in this luxury slowdown.
Nice.
But this isn't just like a blip in the stock market. This is like a bigger.
Exactly. This is a big deal for a lot of luxury brands because, for years now, China has been the growth engine.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, way outpacing any other market. And so their spending habits have really kind of dictated brand strategies for a long time.
Right.
And so when they start to pull back,
Yeah.
it sends shockwaves.
It makes sense that it would have this ripple effect, but is this just a China problem or is it a sign of something bigger happening in the luxury world?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Yeah.
I think part of it is likely tied to, China's economic slowdown, which we've talked about in previous
Yeah.
episodes. But we have to also think about, is this indicative of a broader shift in how the ultra-wealthy are choosing to spend their money?
Mhm.
Are priorities changing? Are there new status symbols emerging? What's going on?
It's interesting you say that because our article also points to these luxury brands in a way pricing themselves out of their own market.
Yeah.
They've drastically increased prices, and it's not just like a little here, a little there.
It's been pretty dramatic.
Yeah.
It's almost jarring when you look at the numbers.
Mm.
The article mentions a Cartier Trinity ring, which is, a classic piece, and it's up 64% since 2019.
Wow.
A Chanel flat bag over 11,000 euros now.
Oh my gosh.
That's a 91% increase.
So even if you are part of that ultra wealthy group, you're probably still thinking twice about dropping that much on a handbag.
Yeah.
What is the strategy behind those price hikes anyway?
Well, I think part of it is definitely about maintaining that aura of exclusivity.
Mm.
If everyone can afford it, it's not really luxury anymore, is it?
Right.
But it's a delicate balance.
Yeah, because if you alienate too many people, even those who could technically afford it,
Mm-hmm.
are you really a luxury brand anymore? Or are you
Right.
just overpriced? And then, the Morgan Stanley report also mentioned that these lower price luxury items are actually gaining in popularity.
That's right. And it's like this self-fulfilling prophecy, right?
Yeah.
You jack up prices to maintain exclusivity, but then people start opting for these more accessible pieces, and suddenly the brand perception shifts.
Yeah.
It's no longer synonymous with, that top-tier aspirational luxury.
And the article uses Burberry as like a case study for exactly this kind of brand struggle. They tried to go even more upmarket, but it totally backfired. Why is that?
Yeah, it's a bit ironic, isn't it? Because they wanted to be seen as even more exclusive.
Mm-hmm.
And so they significantly hiked their prices, especially on their handbags. We're talking upwards of 50% increases.
Wow.
But instead of attracting that wealthier clientele, they seem to have kind of alienated their core customer base. It's a classic case of misreading the room.
Or maybe misreading their customer. Like they saw what other brands were doing with these huge price hikes and thought, oh, we can do that too. We can be even more luxurious.
Right.
But Burberry had like a different kind of appeal, didn't it?
Absolutely. They were known for their classic pieces.
Hmm.
That iconic trench coat, a certain understated elegance. And I think when they started chasing the ultra high-end market,
Yeah.
they lost that.
They lost their identity a little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah.
And I think customers saw right through it.
Yeah, it's a good reminder, I think, that luxury is about more than just a price tag.
Mm.
It's about heritage. It's about craftsmanship. It's about a sense of belonging, I think. And if you lose sight of those things, even the wealthiest shoppers are going to notice.
Exactly.
Yep.
It's about perceived value. And that kind of ties into another really interesting aspect of this whole luxury downturn.
Mm.
The article spends some time talking about, U.S. spending habits.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like we're seeing two very different stories playing out here.
Yeah, it's almost counterintuitive. On the one hand, we're hearing about these luxury brands struggling, but then the article mentions that almost half of high-income earners in the U.S. are still planning on buying luxury goods.
49% to be exact.
Yeah.
Which is nothing to scoff at. It's
Yeah.
a significant number. And it suggests that, while overall luxury spending might be down, there's still a very active segment of the market.
Right.
And this is where I think the Morgan Stanley report provides some really crucial context.
They were looking at the changing demographics of luxury consumers, right?
Precisely.
Or are we talking like a generational divide here?
Yes, millennials are now, entering their prime spending years.
Okay.
They have more disposable income than they did a decade ago, but they're also a generation that, came of age during a recession.
Right. So they're probably a little more price conscious,
Hmm.
maybe a little more likely to really think carefully about where their money's going.
Exactly. And they're looking for value in different ways.
Okay.
It's not just about a flashy logo anymore.
Yeah.
They care about sustainability. They care about ethical sourcing. They care about craftsmanship.
Right.
They want to know that there's a story behind the product.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the key takeaway for a lot of these brands. If they want to survive, if they want to thrive, they need to adapt to this new landscape. It's not enough to just slap a big price tag on something and call it luxury.
Right. It's about understanding the psychology of the modern luxury consumer, recognizing that aspiration takes on different forms for different generations, and perhaps realizing that true luxury isn't something you can buy, it's something you experience.
I love that. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've got Chinese spending down, we've got price hikes kind of backfiring, and this fascinating generational divide emerging in the luxury market really makes you wonder if luxury is supposed to be this indicator of how the economy is doing. What other signals are we missing here? It's more than just like the price of a handbag, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we're talking about, shifts in global economic power. We're talking about, changing consumer confidence, even how different generations view success and what truly defines luxury.
Yeah.
It's really fascinating, I think, to see even those who can spend extravagantly being much more selective, I think much more discerning with their choices.
Yeah, and maybe it's about that value perception too. Like
Yeah.
you were saying, that Cartier ring, even if it's, even if you can afford it, if it doesn't feel like it's really worth twice as much as it was a few years ago,
Right.
maybe you're less likely to buy it. The story, the craftsmanship, the ethics, those things start to matter more.
Precisely. And it circles back, I think, to what we were talking about with millennials, right? They are kind of driving a shift, I think, towards more conscious consumption. And I think luxury brands are really trying to figure out how to genuinely speak to that.
Right.
It can't just be a marketing tactic.
Right, it's got to be authentic.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's like they need to earn that price tag. Prove that their product is really worth that investment. Not just because of the brand name, but because of the values it represents.
Exactly. Because if luxury just becomes purely about signaling status with a big price tag, it risks losing its allure, especially for that next generation of consumers. And I think that could have ripple effects, I think, far beyond just the luxury sector.
So a luxury downturn, but also maybe a luxury evolution in progress, something to keep an eye on for sure. Well, this has been incredibly insightful. Thank you so much for guiding us through this deep dive.
My pleasure.
Now, excuse me, I'm going to go find some new podcasts to listen to, preferably ones that don't make me question my entire shopping budget.